The emergency beacon cut through space like a knife through butter. Commander Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair aboard the exploration ship Terra's Pride, staring at the flashing red dot on his screen. The signal was coming from Xerion Prime, a planet that made even the toughest aliens break out in cold sweats. "Sir, are you sure we should respond to this?" asked Lisa Hayes, the ship's pilot. Her hands gripped the controls a little too tight. "The Galactic Council sent out warnings about that place. Said no one should go there." Jake rubbed his chin and looked at his crew. Bobby Chen, their engineer, was busy checking systems but kept glancing at the screen. Katie Sullivan, their medic, had pulled up everything she could find about Xerion Prime on her tablet. Danny Rodriguez, their communications officer, was listening to chatter from other ships in the area. "What exactly did the warning say?" Jake asked. Katie cleared her throat and read from her tablet. "Let's see here. The Zilithian Empire calls it the valley where souls go to scream. The Corvin Federation says it's cursed ground that drinks the sanity of all who walk upon it. The Bruthan warrior clans won't even fly over the planet. They say the ghosts of ancient battles still fight there." Danny looked up from his console. "Captain, I'm picking up some interesting chatter. Seems like every alien ship in this sector is steering clear of Xerion Prime. They're all talking about how dangerous it is." Jake stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. The planet looked normal enough from space. It was mostly brown and rocky with a few patches of green. Nothing special about it at all. "Bobby, what's your take on this?" Jake asked. The engineer shrugged. "Well, sir, according to the records, there was a big battle there about 200 years ago. Bunch of different alien species fought over some mining rights. Ships crashed, lots of folks died, and then everyone just left the wreckage behind. So it's an old battlefield," Jake said, "and that's it. That's what the data says, but every alien species treats it like it's the most dangerous place in the galaxy," Bobby replied. The distress signal kept beeping. Someone down there needed help, and Jake had never been the type to ignore people in trouble, no matter what scary stories surrounded the place. "Lisa, set course for Xerion Prime," he ordered. "Sir, are you sure about this?" she asked again. "Someone's in trouble down there. We're going to help them. That's what we do." The ship moved toward the planet, and Jake could feel the tension in the air. His crew trusted him, but they were clearly worried. He had to admit all the warnings from different alien species did sound pretty intense. But Jake had been in the military for 15 years before joining the exploration service. He'd seen real battlefields on Earth, and they didn't scare him much anymore. As they got closer to the planet, Danny started picking up more detailed signals. "Captain, it's definitely a Zilithian ship. They've been broadcasting for 3 days. Sounds like they crashed and need immediate evacuation." "Any other details?" Jake asked. "They keep mentioning something about voices in the darkness and the screaming metal. They sound pretty scared, sir." Jake nodded. The Terra's Pride entered the planet's atmosphere, and soon they could see the surface clearly. The infamous valley of screaming metal stretched out below them like a massive junkyard. Crashed ships from dozens of different alien species littered the ground. Some were half buried in the dirt. Others were twisted into strange shapes by whatever weapons had hit them. "Well, I'll be damned," Bobby said, pressing his face to a window. "It really does look like a battlefield." Lisa piloted the ship over the valley, looking for a good place to land. The crashed Zilithian vessel was easy to spot. It was a small research ship that had clearly made a hard landing near the center of the valley. A small emergency shelter sat next to it, glowing with the pale blue light of alien technology. "There," Jake pointed. "Land us about 100 meters from their camp." "Captain, shouldn't we just pick them up and leave right away?" Katie asked. "I mean, if this place is as dangerous as everyone says." "We'll see what the situation is first," Jake replied. "Maybe they're hurt. Maybe their ship can be fixed. We don't run away from problems without understanding them first." The Terra's Pride touched down with a soft thud. Jake looked at his crew. They were nervous, but they were good people. They'd follow him anywhere, even to a place that scared the entire galaxy. "All right, everyone suit up," he ordered. "Standard away mission gear. We're going to go say hello to our new friends and see what all the fuss is about." As they prepared to leave the ship, Danny intercepted more alien communications. Ships were reporting their position to others, warning them to stay away from Xerion Prime. The word was spreading that humans had actually landed on the cursed planet. "Sir," Danny said with a grin, "I think we're about to become famous. Half the galaxy is watching to see if we survive the next hour." Jake laughed. "Well then, let's not disappoint them." The airlock opened, and the human crew stepped onto the surface of Zerion Prime. The air was thin but breathable. The gravity was a little lighter than Earth normal. The temperature was comfortable, maybe like a cool spring day back home. Jake looked around at the battlefield. Twisted metal and broken ships were everywhere, but it wasn't scary. It was actually kind of interesting. Each crash site told a story about what had happened during the battle. Some ships had clearly tried to ram each other. Others had been shot down by energy weapons that had left interesting scorch patterns on their hulls. The wind blew through the wreckage, making soft whistling sounds as it passed through holes and gaps in the metal. It was actually quite peaceful. "This is it?" Lisa asked, looking around. "This is what has the entire galaxy terrified?" "Looks like a bunch of old junk to me," Bobby said, kicking at a piece of debris. They walked toward the Zilithian emergency shelter. As they got closer, they could see movement inside. The aliens had spotted them and were waving frantically. Jake activated his universal translator and called out, "Hello there, we're here to help." The response was immediate and panicked. A tall, thin Zilithian with gray skin and large black eyes emerged from the shelter. He was shaking visibly. "Humans," he cried. "You must leave this place immediately. The curse will take you as it has taken so many others. This ground is soaked with the blood of warriors, and their spirits seek revenge on all living things." Jake looked at his crew, then back at the terrified alien. "I'm Commander Jake Morrison. What's your name?" "I am Science Officer Vexhai of the research vessel Swift Current. We have been trapped here for 3 days, and each night the voices grow louder. The metal screams with the agony of the dead. You must evacuate us now before the darkness falls and the real horrors begin." Jake glanced up at the sky. The sun was starting to set, and apparently that was when things got scary around here. He made a decision that would change everything. "Bobby, start setting up our base camp," he ordered. "We're staying the night." Vexhai stared at Jake like the human had just suggested dancing naked in a volcano. The Zilithian's large black eyes grew even wider, and his gray skin turned a pale shade of green. "Did you just say you are staying the night?" Vexhai asked in a shaky voice. "Here? On the cursed ground?" "That's right," Jake replied calmly. "My crew needs to check your ship, see if we can fix it, and honestly, I'm curious about this place. Seems like a lot of fuss over some old metal." The other Zilithians emerged from their shelter. There were 4 of them total, all looking like they hadn't slept in days. They whispered to each other in their own language, pointing at the humans with trembling fingers. Bobby was already unpacking equipment from their ship. He set down a large case and opened it, revealing camping gear that looked nothing like military equipment. Lisa helped him pull out sleeping bags, a portable stove, and what looked like folding chairs. "Sir," one of the younger Zilithians spoke, "Professor, with great respect, no living being has ever spent a full night on Zerion Prime and remained sane. The voices of the dead call out from the metal. The spirits of fallen warriors seek to drag the living into their eternal battle." Katie pulled out her medical kit and approached the aliens. "You guys look tired. When's the last time you ate something?" "We have not eaten since yesterday," Vexhai admitted. "The sounds from the battlefield make it hard to keep food down." "What sounds?" Danny asked, setting up his communication equipment. He had headphones on and was listening carefully to the environment around them. "The screaming," another Zilithian whispered. "The metal screams with the voices of the damned. Listen carefully and you will hear them crying out for revenge." Danny tilted his head and listened. After a moment, he started to smile. "Oh, you mean that whistling sound?" The wind had picked up a little as the sun got lower. It was blowing through the wrecked ships, creating a variety of sounds as it passed through holes, gaps, and hollow spaces in the metal. Some were high-pitched whistles, others were low moans, and a few sounded almost musical. "Yeah, that's just wind," Danny said. "It's actually kind of nice, like nature's own sound effects." Bobby had found a flat area between 2 crashed ships and was setting up their camp. He hammered tent stakes into the ground while humming a tune. The sound of his hammer hitting metal rang out across the battlefield, and the Zilithians flinched with each strike. "You are making noise," HFY hissed. "The spirits will hear you." "Good," Bobby called back. "Maybe they can give me a hand with this tent." Lisa was exploring the nearby wreckage with the enthusiasm of a kid in a candy store. She climbed up onto the hull of a crashed Corvin battlecruiser and looked out over the valley. "Hey, Jake," she called. "You've got to see this view. It's actually pretty beautiful up here." The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The twisted metal caught the light in interesting ways, creating patterns and shapes that were almost artistic. What the aliens saw as a graveyard, Lisa saw as a sculpture garden. Katie had convinced the Zilithians to let her check their health. She found they were dehydrated and exhausted from 3 days of fear and sleepless nights. She gave them water and some human food rations. "This tastes strange," one of the younger aliens said, trying a protein bar. "It's not fancy, but it'll keep you going," Katie replied. "You need to eat something." As darkness fell, the sounds from the battlefield became more noticeable. The wind created an orchestra of different tones as it moved through the wreckage. Some pieces of metal vibrated like tuning forks. Others creaked and groaned as the temperature changed. The Zilithians huddled together in their shelter, clearly terrified. But the humans seemed to find the sounds interesting rather than scary. "It's like a natural wind chime," Lisa said, sitting in one of the folding chairs Bobby had set up. Danny had rigged up some speakers and was playing soft music from Earth. The gentle guitar and violin melodies mixed with the sounds from the battlefield, creating something that was actually quite peaceful. "This is insane," HFY muttered, watching the humans relax in the middle of what his people considered hell on Earth. Bobby had found an old plasma cannon that was still partially intact. Instead of being frightened by it, he was using it as a table for their portable stove. He was heating up some soup and making coffee. "Coffee's ready," he announced. "Anyone want some?" Jake accepted a cup and sat down next to the makeshift fire Bobby had built using pieces of debris. The flames cast dancing shadows on the surrounding wreckage, but instead of looking spooky, it just looked cozy. "I have to ask," Jake said to HFY, "what exactly are you so afraid of? I mean, besides the sounds, what's supposed to happen here?" HFY looked around nervously before answering. "The stories say that anyone who stays here too long begins to hear voices calling to them. The spirits of dead warriors try to recruit the living for their ghost army. Many who have visited this place have reported seeing figures moving in the darkness, phantom ships flying overhead, and weapons firing by themselves." Danny looked up from his equipment. "You know, I'm not picking up any unusual energy readings. No electromagnetic interference, no strange radiation. If there were ghosts here, wouldn't my equipment detect something?" "Ghosts do not register on scientific instruments," one of the Zilithians said firmly. "Maybe not," Katie said, "but fear and exhaustion can make people see and hear things that aren't really there. You guys have been scared and awake for 3 days. That's enough to make anyone start hallucinating." As if on cue, a loud metallic groan echoed across the valley. The Zilithians jumped and moved closer together, but Bobby just looked up from his soup and nodded. "That'll be the hull of that big ship over there," he said, pointing to a massive cruiser in the distance. "Metal expands and contracts when the temperature changes. Gets cold at night. Metal shrinks, joints creak. Basic physics." Jake stood up and walked a little ways from the camp. The valley stretched out before him, filled with the remains of ships from dozens of different species. In the starlight, he could see the shapes of fighters, cruisers, and massive dreadnoughts. Each one had a story. Each one represented lives lost in a battle that happened before he was even born. It was sad, sure. War was always sad. But scary? Jake had seen plenty of battlefields on Earth, and this was just an old one. The dead were long gone. What remained was just metal and memories. "Lisa," he called, "what do you think about setting up a proper perimeter?" "You mean like a defensive perimeter?" she asked. "No, more like marking out the best spots for sleeping bags. That area over there looks pretty flat, and it's sheltered from the wind. The Zilithians watched in complete bewilderment as the humans began treating the most feared place in the galaxy like a camping ground. Jake marked spots for sleeping, Bobby identified which wrecked ships might have useful salvage, Katie set up a first aid station, and Danny tested the acoustics of different areas to see where his music sounded best. "This is the most disturbing thing I have ever witnessed," Vexhai whispered to his companions. "They are not afraid of anything." As the night deepened, the sounds of the battlefield continued, but instead of the terrifying wails of the damned, the humans heard wind chimes, settling metal, and the gentle background music Danny was playing. They sat around their small fire, sharing stories and jokes while the Zilithians watched from their shelter in complete disbelief. Jake looked up at the stars, which were particularly bright on Zarian Prime due to the lack of atmospheric pollution. It really was a beautiful night for camping. Jake woke up to the sound of multiple ships landing nearby. He stretched in his sleeping bag and looked around the camp. His crew was still asleep, and the Zilithians were huddled in their shelter like they had been all night. But the rumble of engines told him they were about to have visitors. "Everyone up," he called softly. "We've got company." Bobby sat up and rubbed his eyes. "Did we survive the night, Captain? Are we still sane and not part of some ghost army?" "Seems like it," Jake replied with a grin. "In fact, I slept better than I have in weeks. This place is actually pretty quiet once you get used to the wind sounds." Lisa was already on her feet, looking through a pair of binoculars at the incoming ships. "We've got at least 6 different vessels out there. Different species, too, by the look of them. Bruthen, Corvin, maybe some others I don't recognize." Danny powered up his communication equipment and immediately started picking up chatter. "Captain, you're not going to believe this. Half the galaxy heard about us landing here yesterday. Word spread fast that humans actually spent the night on Zarion Prime." "And?" Jake asked. "Well, sir, some of them think we're all dead or crazy by now. Others think we're some kind of super soldiers who can't be affected by supernatural forces. A few are calling us the bravest warriors in the galaxy." Jake laughed. "All we did was go camping." The first ship to approach their camp was a Bruthen vessel. The Bruthen were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who feared nothing. But when Captain Throck emerged from his ship, he looked nervous. He was a big alien covered in thick scales and carrying enough weapons to arm a small army. "Humans," Throck called out as he approached. "I am Captain Throck of the Bruthen clan, Navy. We have come to witness the warriors who can survive the cursed ground." Jake walked over to meet him, carrying a cup of coffee Bobby had just made. "Good morning, Captain. Want some coffee? It's fresh." Throck stopped walking and stared at Jake. Behind him, several other Bruthen warriors were looking around the camp with confusion. They had expected to find either dead humans or humans driven mad by supernatural forces. Instead, they found what looked like a peaceful camping trip. "You spent the entire night here?" Throck asked. "Yep. Slept like a baby. This place is actually pretty comfortable once you set up right." More ships were landing, and aliens from various species were gathering. At a safe distance from the battlefield, they whispered among themselves, pointing at the human camp and the relaxed way the crew was going about their morning routine. Katie was checking on the Zilithians again. They had managed to get a little sleep after the humans proved that nothing terrible happened during the night, but they still looked exhausted. "How are you guys feeling?" she asked. "Better," Vexhai admitted. "The voices were quieter last night. Perhaps your presence drove away some of the spirits. Or maybe you just finally got some rest," Katie replied kindly. Bobby had discovered something interesting during his exploration of the nearby wreckage. A crashed Corvin fighter had a still-functioning environmental system that was pumping out warm, humid air. "Hey, everyone," Bobby called. "Free sauna over here." He had rigged up a small enclosure using salvaged hull plating around the fighter's air vent. The warm air created a perfect steam bath effect. Lisa was already testing it out, sitting on a makeshift bench with a towel around her shoulders. "This is amazing," she said. "It's like a natural hot tub, but with air instead of water." The watching aliens were having trouble processing what they were seeing. The humans had not only survived the night on the cursed battlefield, they were turning it into a vacation resort. A group of Corvan diplomats approached the camp next. The Corvans were known for being very logical and scientific. Their leader, Ambassador Krell, had brought several scientists with him. "Commander Morrison," Krell said formally, "we have come to study the phenomenon of human resistance to psychic trauma. Our scientists believe you may have natural immunity to the supernatural, forces that affect other species." Jake scratched his head. "What supernatural forces? All I see here is a bunch of old crashed ships and some interesting acoustics when the wind blows." "The voices of the dead," Krell explained. "The phantom warriors. The cursed energy that drives visitors mad." Danny looked up from where he was setting up what appeared to be an outdoor speaker system. "You mean the wind sounds? I've been recording them all morning. Want to hear?" He played back some of the sounds from the night before. What came through the speakers was a collection of whistles, creaks, and hums that actually sounded quite musical when played together. "I'm thinking of mixing this with some Earth music," Danny said. "Could make a great relaxation album, sounds of the battlefield or something like that." More aliens arrived throughout the morning. Soon there was a small crowd of ships parked around the valley, all maintaining what they considered a safe distance from the battlefield. But none of them could stay away. The sight of humans casually living on the most feared planet in the galaxy was too fascinating to ignore. Jake noticed that the crowd was growing and made a decision that would change everything. "You know what?" he announced to his crew. "If we're going to have visitors, we might as well be good hosts." "What do you mean, sir?" Lisa asked. "I mean, we should give tours. Show these folks that there's nothing to be afraid of here." Bobby grinned. "I like it. I could show them the different types of ships that crashed here. This is like a museum of galactic military history." Katie nodded. "And I could explain how fear and lack of sleep can cause hallucinations, help them understand what really happened to previous visitors." Danny was already setting up a better sound system. "I could do a presentation on acoustics, show them how the wind creates all those sounds they think are ghostly voices." Jake walked over to the crowd of watching aliens. Most of them backed away as he approached, but he smiled and kept his hands visible and relaxed. "Good morning, everyone," he called out. "I'm Commander Jake Morrison. My crew and I would like to invite you to join us for a tour of this historic battlefield. We can show you the real story behind what happened here." The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. A few of the braver ones stepped forward. "Is it safe?" asked a young Zilithian scientist. "Safer than flying through an asteroid field," Jake replied. "We've been here for almost 24 hours now, and the worst thing that happened was Bobby burned the coffee this morning." "Hey," Bobby called from the camp, "that was an accident." Slowly, a small group of aliens agreed to take the tour. They stayed close together and jumped at every sound, but they followed Jake into the battlefield. The first stop was the crashed Corvan battlecruiser that Lisa had climbed the day before. Jake pointed out the scorch marks on the hull and explained how energy weapons worked. "This ship was hit by at least 3 different types of weapons," he said. "You can tell by the different burn patterns. The crew probably never knew what hit them." "Are there spirits trapped here?" whispered a Bruthan warrior. "No," Jake said gently. "They died 200 years ago. They're gone. This is just metal now. It can't hurt anyone." The tour continued for 2 hours. Jake showed them different crash sites. Bobby explained the technology. Katie talked about the psychology of fear, and Danny demonstrated how the wind created the various sounds that had scared visitors for centuries. By the end of the tour, some of the aliens were starting to relax. A few even asked questions about human camping techniques and whether they could try sleeping under the stars like the humans did. "This is unprecedented," Ambassador Krell said to his fellow diplomats. "The humans have completely transformed our understanding of this place." As the day went on, more ships arrived. Word was spreading throughout the galaxy that humans were not only surviving on Zarion Prime, they were giving tours and treating it like a vacation destination. The most feared planet in known space was becoming the most talked-about tourist attraction. 3 weeks had passed since Jake and his crew first landed on Zarion Prime. What started as a simple rescue mission had turned into something nobody could have predicted. The Valley of Screaming Metal was now buzzing with activity from morning until night. Jake stood on top of the old Corvan battlecruiser, looking out over what had become the galaxy's most unlikely tourist destination. Below him, groups of aliens were walking through the wreckage with human guides taking pictures and asking questions. The fear that had kept species away for 2 centuries was gone, replaced by curiosity and wonder. Captain Morrison to the communication. "Center, please." Danny's voice came over the camp's speaker system. Jake climbed down from his lookout post and walked to what used to be their small camping area. It had grown into a proper settlement now. Bobby had converted several of the larger crashed ships into comfortable living spaces. Katie had set up a medical center in an old Bruthen destroyer. Danny had built a communication hub that could reach ships anywhere in the solar system. "What's up, Danny?" Jake asked as he entered the communication center. "We've got a call from the Galactic Council, sir. They want to talk to you officially." Jake sat down in front of the communication screen and activated the long-distance transmitter. The image that appeared showed 3 aliens sitting at a curved desk. He recognized them as representatives from the major galactic powers. "Commander Morrison," said the Zilithian counselor in the center. "I am Counselor Zaratek. We are calling to discuss the situation on Zerion Prime." "Good afternoon, Counselor. How can I help you?" "You have created quite a situation," said the Corvan counselor on the left. "What was once forbidden ground is now receiving hundreds of visitors per day. Our shipping lanes are crowded with tourist vessels heading to your location." The Bruthen counselor on the right leaned forward. "The warrior clans are confused. For generations, we have used Zerion Prime as a test of courage. Young warriors would try to spend one night on the cursed ground to prove their bravery. Now our younglings want to go there for vacation." Jake tried not to smile. "I can see how that might be confusing. The economic impact has been significant," Counselor Zaratek continued. "Hotels and restaurants on nearby planets are reporting record profits. Tour companies are booking flights months in advance. The Zerion system has gone from a place to avoid to one of the most popular destinations in the galaxy. Is that a problem?" Jake asked. The 3 counselors looked at each other before Zaratek answered. "Actually, Commander, we are calling to offer you a proposal. The Galactic Council would like to officially designate Zerion Prime as a cultural exchange zone. We want to hire you and your crew to establish the first permanent human settlement on the planet." Jake blinked in surprise. "You want us to stay here permanently?" "The galaxy has learned much from watching humans on Zerion Prime," the Corvan counselor explained. "You have shown us that fear often comes from misunderstanding. Your species has a unique ability to find comfort and beauty in places others find terrifying. We believe this could be the beginning of a new era of cooperation between species," added the Bruthen counselor. "A place where different cultures can meet and learn from each other." Jake looked around the communication center. Through the window, he could see Lisa teaching a group of young Zilithians how to skip stones across the crater lake. Bobby was showing some Bruthen engineers how to build camping furniture from salvaged ship parts. Katie was leading her daily Fear and Facts seminar for alien visitors who wanted to understand human psychology. "I'll need to talk to my crew," Jake said. "Of course. Take your time. But Commander, the offer comes with some very attractive benefits. Full funding for whatever facilities you want to build, official recognition as the first human ambassador to the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program, and a salary that would make you wealthy by any species standards." After the call ended, Jake gathered his crew around their original campfire site. They still sat there every evening, even though the camp had grown into a small town around them. "So," Jake said, "they want us to stay here permanently and run this place as an official tourist destination and cultural center." "I'm in," Bobby said immediately. "I've got at least 50 different projects I want to work on with all this salvage. Plus, I've never had this much fun at a job." Lisa nodded. "This place has grown on me, and I love seeing the look on aliens' faces when they realize there's nothing to be afraid of." Katie smiled. "I'm helping people overcome their fears every day. It's the best medical work I've ever done." Danny grinned. "I've already started broadcasting a daily radio show called Good Morning from the Battlefield. I've got listeners from 12 different star systems." "All right then," Jake said. "I guess we're staying." Over the next few months, Zerion Prime was transformed completely. The humans worked with alien engineers to build proper facilities while preserving the historical nature of the battlefield. Walking paths were created between crash sites, with information plaques explaining the history of each ship. The old crater lake became a recreational swimming area. Several of the larger crashed vessels were converted into hotels and restaurants. Jake's favorite addition was the observation deck Bobby built on top of the biggest crashed ship in the valley. From there, visitors could see the entire battlefield and understand the scope of the ancient battle, while also appreciating the beauty of the landscape. The screaming metal sounds that had terrified aliens for centuries became one of the planet's main attractions. Danny had figured out how to predict when the wind conditions would create the best acoustic effects, and he scheduled evening concerts where visitors could listen to the natural music of the battlefield while human musicians played along. Vex High, the Zilithian scientist they had originally rescued, became the first alien to request permanent residence on Xerion Prime. He had overcome his fear of the place and now worked as Jake's assistant, helping to coordinate the growing cultural exchange programs. "I cannot believe I was once terrified of this place," Vexhai said to Jake one evening as they watched the sunset from the observation deck. "Fear makes everything seem bigger and scarier than it really is," Jake replied. "Sometimes all you need is someone to turn on the lights and show you what's really there." "Is that what humans do? Turn on lights in dark places?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "I guess we just don't see as many dark places as other species do. Where you see ghosts and curses, we see camping opportunities and historical sites." The changes to Xerion Prime had effects far beyond just tourism. The planet became a symbol throughout the galaxy of how perspective could change everything. Other cursed or dangerous locations were being revisited by scientists and explorers, many of whom discovered that the dangers had been greatly exaggerated by fear and superstition. Jake received dozens of requests from other human exploration crews asking for advice on dealing with supernatural phenomena they encountered on other worlds. His standard response was always the same: pack a good tent, bring plenty of coffee, and remember that most ghosts are just wind and settling metal. 1 year after their arrival, Jake stood in the same spot where he had first met the terrified Zilithian survivors. The emergency shelter was gone, replaced by a monument marking the place where humans first camped on Xerion Prime. A small plaque read, "On this spot, humans proved that one species' nightmare can be another's vacation paradise." Danny's voice came over the camp's speaker system, just like it did every morning. "Good morning from Xerion Prime, the galaxy's friendliest former battlefield. Today's weather is perfect for hiking, the crater lake is warm enough for swimming, and tonight's wind concert starts at sunset. Remember, what doesn't kill you makes a great camping story." Jake smiled and headed toward the communication center. Another day at the office was about to begin, and he had never been happier to go to work.